Minoru Genda was one of the most important Japanese naval officers of the 20th century, remembered mainly for his role in planning the attack on Pearl Harbor and for helping shape the development of Japanese naval aviation, both before and after the Second World War. His life reflects the story of Japan's military rise in the early 1900s, its devastating defeat in 1945, and its gradual rebuilding in the decades that followed. Although he never became as widely known as some other wartime figures, Genda's influence on military strategy, aviation tactics, and Japan's post-war defense forces was deep and long-lasting. He was born on August 16, 1904, in a rural part of Hiroshima Prefecture. His family was not wealthy, but they valued education and discipline. As a child, he was energetic, confident, and fascinated by machines, especially airplanes, which were still a relatively new invention at the time. Japan was modernizing rapidly, and aviation captured the imagination of many young people. Genda became determined to join the military and work with aircraft, seeing flight as both a personal passion and a way to serve his country. In 1924, Genda entered the Imperial Japanese Naval Academy at Etajima, one of the most demanding military schools in Japan. Life there was strict, competitive, and exhausting, but Genda excelled, especially in physical training and leadership roles. After graduating, he chose to enter naval aviation, which was still a developing field but gaining importance as Japan expanded its naval power. He learned to fly at a time when the idea of using aircraft in naval battles was still considered experimental. These early experiences shaped his belief that airplanes, especially carrier-based aircraft, could change the nature of war at sea. During the 1930s, Genda gained a reputation as one of the most skilled pilots and daring tacticians in the Imperial Japanese Navy. He helped develop new combat maneuvers, trained younger pilots, and pushed for improvements in aircraft design. Many of the pilots he trained later became prominent aces in the Pacific War. Genda also took part in naval aviation demonstrations and competitions that helped convince military leaders that Japan needed a strong carrier force. His ability to think creatively and to challenge old naval traditions made him stand out among his peers. By the late 1930s, Japan's leaders believed the country was heading toward conflict with the United States. Genda became one of the main advocates for using a large coordinated strike force of aircraft carriers as the centerpiece of Japan's naval strategy. He worked closely with other innovative officers, including Admiral Isoroku Yamamoto, who shared his belief that the only hope of beating the United States early in a war was to deliver a sudden, overwhelming blow that would cripple the American Pacific Fleet before it had time to mobilize. When Yamamoto approved a plan to attack the U.S. fleet at Pearl Harbor, he made Genda a central member of the planning team. Genda's input shaped the attack in several major ways. He suggested using all 6 of Japan's large carriers in a single strike force, an idea that was bold and risky, but also powerful. He devised the order in which aircraft would take off, the routes they would follow, and the timing of the attack waves. He also developed the idea of training pilots intensively to hit multiple types of targets, battleships, airfields, and other key facilities, within a very short period. For months, Genda oversaw rehearsals, refined tactical details, and worked to maximize the element of surprise. He believed that the success of the attack depended on speed, coordination, and shock. Although he was not the highest-ranking officer involved, his tactical imagination shaped many of the details that made the attack so devastating. On December 7, 1941, the Japanese strike force reached Hawaii and carried out the attack, sinking or damaging many American ships and destroying large numbers of aircraft on the ground. The attack brought the United States into the war and changed the course of world history. Although considered a tactical success for Japan, it ultimately failed to achieve its long-term goal of preventing American recovery. After Pearl Harbor, Genda continued serving in the Pacific. He helped plan and coordinate air operations in several major battles, including the defense of Rabaul and actions in the Solomon Islands. However, as the war continued, Japan's naval air power suffered heavy losses, and its ability to replace planes and pilots declined. Genda witnessed the gradual collapse of the strategy he had helped create. He sometimes argued with higher commanders about how to best use Japan's remaining air forces, but the situation worsened as the United States gained overwhelming superiority in both ships and aircraft. Late in the war, Genda was assigned to help defend the Japanese home islands. He supported efforts to reorganize scattered air units and prepare for a possible American invasion. Some of his colleagues became involved in kamikaze operations, but Genda did not support the idea of suicide attacks as a long-term strategy, believing they wasted valuable pilots. Still, he worked within the desperate conditions of 1945, trying to find any possible way to slow the American advance. When Japan surrendered in August 1945, Genda's career as an officer in the Imperial Navy came to an abrupt end. After the war, Genda, like many military leaders, was investigated by the occupying Allied authorities because he had focused mainly on aviation tactics and not on political decisions or war crimes. He was not prosecuted. He eventually returned to civilian life, but he remained deeply interested in aviation and national defense. When Japan's new post-war self-defense forces were created in the 1950s under a peaceful constitution, Genda became one of the former officers invited to help rebuild Japan's air capabilities, this time under American guidance and with the goal of self-defense rather than expansion. Genda joined the Japan Air Self-Defense Force, JASDF, in 1954, and quickly became one of its most influential leaders. He helped modernize training, introduce jet aircraft, and create a defense strategy suitable for the new political environment. His ability to understand both Japanese and American military thinking made him a valuable figure during a period when Japan was still reshaping its identity after the trauma of the war. In 1959, he rose to the rank of Chief of Staff of the JASDF, the highest position in the service, and worked to strengthen cooperation with the United States while maintaining Japan's independence in key strategic decisions. Beyond his military work, Genda entered politics. He served as a member of the Japanese Diet, Parliament, for the Liberal Democratic Party in the 1960s and 1970s. In this role, he advocated for strong national defense within the limits of Japan's constitutional restrictions. He was known for speaking plainly, arguing that Japan needed to prepare carefully for future threats, but also avoid the mistakes of militarism that had led to tragedy during the Second World War. Even though he had helped plan one of the most famous attacks in history, he became a voice for cautious and responsible defense policy. Throughout his later life, Genda was often asked about Pearl Harbor. He acknowledged his role but rarely expressed regret or pride. Instead, he explained that he had acted as a professional officer following the strategic thinking of the time. He believed the attack had been militarily justified from Japan's point of view, but he also understood that it had brought unimaginable destruction to both sides and led to a war Japan could not win. His personal reflections were usually calm and analytical, rather than emotional, showing the mindset of someone who had dedicated his life to military service. Minoru Genda died on August 15, 1989, almost exactly 44 years after Japan's surrender. His life spanned a dramatic era in Japanese history, from the rise of imperial ambitions to the devastation of war and the reconstruction of a peaceful nation. He remains a complex figure, innovative, determined, and sometimes controversial. To some, he is remembered as the brilliant strategist behind Pearl Harbor. To others, he is a symbol of Japan's post-war transformation, a former warrior who helped build a defense force dedicated to stability rather than conquest.